In the early 20th century, Russia was a nation teetering on the brink of chaos. Under the rule of Tsar Nicholas II, the Romanov dynasty had long been marked by both grandeur and decay. The once powerful empire was strained by internal dissent, economic hardship, and political unrest. The streets of St. Petersburg, then the imperial capital, became battlegrounds of revolution and discontent, embodying a nation struggling to modernize while clinging tightly to its autocratic past. During this turbulent era, the ruling Romanov family struggled to maintain control amid mounting pressure from the populace demanding change. Meanwhile, the imperial court sat at the center of a web of intrigue, power struggles, and secret loyalties. It was within this charged environment that Rasputin's influence began to take hold, an influence that would soon ignite widespread suspicion and fear among the aristocrats and political elites. St. Petersburg, with its palaces and grand boulevards, was the crown jewel of Russia's imperial splendor. Yet beneath this veneer of wealth and power, the city was rife with unrest. Workers' strikes, political agitation, and calls for socialism swirled through the streets, foreshadowing upheaval. The political landscape was fragile, and the court was marred by scandal and factional rivalries. It was into this world that a Siberian peasant and self-proclaimed mystic emerged, claiming to possess divine insight and healing powers. Rasputin was born into humble circumstances in Siberia around 1869. His early life was marked by hardship and a lack of formal education, yet he developed a reputation as a charismatic healer and preacher. Rumors of his mystical abilities spread quickly, attracting a following of loyal devotees who believed he possessed a divine connection to the spiritual realm. His reputation traveled beyond Siberia, reaching the court of the Russian royal family. The rise of Rasputin into the elite circles of St. Petersburg was extraordinary. His unconventional appearance, dark, unkempt hair and piercing eyes, combined with his unorthodox manner, made him an enigmatic figure. Despite his outsider status, Rasputin gained favor with Tsarina Alexandra, the wife of Tsar Nicholas II. She was physically frail and deeply religious, seeking health, spiritual solace and healing in Rasputin during her own times of crisis. Rasputin's supposed ability to alleviate her son Alexei's hemophilia, a hereditary bleeding disorder, solidified his influence over her. This personal bond translated into political power. The Tsarina believed Rasputin was a holy man sent by God, and she welcomed his counsel on spiritual and even state matters. Rasputin's presence at court, however, stirred suspicion and resentment among the aristocracy. Many saw him as a manipulative outsider exploiting the royal family's vulnerabilities for his own gain. Court officials, ministers, and noblemen grew increasingly distrustful of Rasputin's growing influence, viewing him as a dangerous figure who threatened the stability of Russia. Beyond personal perceptions, there were rumors and legends swirling around Rasputin's character. Stories of debauchery, black magic, and dark rituals tainted his reputation. Some claimed he engaged in immoral acts, using mystic rituals to manipulate and seduce those around him. Others whispered that his influence over the Tsarina and her advisorship was a form of political corruption. These tales fueled widespread anxiety, especially as Russia approached a period of intense upheaval. As Rasputin's prominence grew, so did the resentment among the Russian aristocracy and political factions. Many believed his presence in court was a sign of the monarchy's declining authority, a symbol of declining morals, and a sign that the old order was crumbling. Critics argued that Rasputin's mystical influence interfered with governmental decisions, weakening the state's stability. His close relationship with the Tsarina, especially during the tense years leading up to the Russian Revolution, only intensified accusations that the court was being manipulated by a dark force beyond rational control. This period was also marked by the first signs of ethnic and social tension that would eventually culminate in revolution. Russia's peasantry and working classes grew restless, demanding land, bread, and freedom. Meanwhile, the aristocrats and political elites grappled with their own fears of losing power. Rasputin, as a figure who embodied mysticism intertwined with the political chaos, became a lightning rod for these tensions, both feared and vilified. In this environment of paranoia and intrigue, Rasputin's influence was seen as emblematic of the broader unrest plaguing Russia. His ties to the imperial family made him a target for those seeking to restore order, or to overthrow the monarchy altogether. Highly placed officials and nobles began secretly plotting how to diminish his sway or eliminate him altogether. Rumors circulated that Rasputin's mystical powers extended beyond healing, potentially wielding real influence over state affairs, an idea that fed fears of a clandestine, dark cabal working behind the scenes. By the time Rasputin's story reaches its pivotal moment, the dark world of Imperial Russia had already been shadowed by political corruption, social upheaval, and a growing sense of doom. His rise from a Siberian monk to a court figure epitomized the chaotic and mysterious nature of this troubled nation. The complex web of loyalty, suspicion, and conspiracy that surrounded him would eventually lead to the dramatic and controversial events surrounding his death, events that continue to fascinate and mystify historians and storytellers alike. In the end, Rasputin's story is intertwined with the twilight of Imperial Russia, a nation at odds with itself, haunted by the ghosts of its past, and teetering on the edge of revolutionary chaos. Rasputin's persona has long been shrouded in layers of mystique, legend, and shadow, making it difficult to separate fact from fiction. To understand the true man behind the myth, we must peel back the centuries of gossip, propaganda, and speculation that have transformed him into a nearly supernatural figure. What emerges is a complex, florid, and deeply controversial individual whose influence over the Romanovs and the fate of Russia remains a subject of intense debate to this day. Grigory Yefimovich Rasputin was born around 1869 in the remote Siberian village of Pokrovskoy. Raised in a peasant family, his early years were marked by hardship, spiritual longing, and a restless pursuit of meaning beyond the confines of his humble upbringing. Rumors swirl that Rasputin was originally destined for a religious life, but he left his humble village as a young man, wandering across Siberia, where he claimed to experience visions and to have developed mystical powers. Some accounts suggest he had a natural charisma or an uncanny ability to heal, which quickly garnered attention among local villagers and monks. Others view him as a manipulative charlatan exploiting folklore and superstition for personal gain. His reputation as a mystic and healer grew, leading Rasputin to position himself as a spiritual advisor in the wider Russian political and social landscape. His early reputation was modest, but the story took a sudden turn after his arrival in St. Petersburg in the early 1900s. It was here that Rasputin's enigmatic persona truly began to take shape. The Russian court, desperate for spiritual guidance amid political chaos, was increasingly drawn to his reputed divine gift for healing. He quickly gained favors among the aristocracy, especially Tsarina Alexandra, the wife of Tsar Nicholas II. Unlike her more traditional and cautious advisors, Alexandra saw Rasputin as a holy man, a healer who could aid her ailing son. The Romanov royal family's faith in Rasputin's mystical abilities was cemented by the health crisis of Tsarevich Alexei, who suffered from hemophilia. Multiple treatments had failed to improve his condition, and the boy's episodes of internal bleeding were increasingly life-threatening. Rasputin appeared to have a calming influence over the boy and was credited with alleviating his suffering, at least in the eyes of the royal family. This deepened Alexandra's dependence on him, leading her to surround Rasputin with an aura of unquestioned trust. To her, he was a shining light and a protector against evil influences. However, Rasputin's influence was not welcomed by everyone. As he rose in prominence, he became the target of intense criticism among the Russian aristocracy, government officials, and political reformers. Many viewed him as a dangerous mystic, a manipulative adventurer who intertwined superstition and political favoritism to undermine the very stability of Russia. Rumors about his lifestyle spread rapidly, accusations of debauchery, drunkenness, and sexual indiscretions became part of the narrative that painted him as a corrupt influence over the court. Legends of Rasputin's supposed debauchery and black magic abounded. Some claimed he engaged in orgies or rituals that involved dark forces, further fueling contempt among the nobility. Tales of his alleged black magic practices, serpent or devil worship, casting spells, and curses took root in popular imagination. Whether or not these allegations held any truth has long been debated, but they served to vilify Rasputin as an embodiment of moral decay and sinister influence that threatened the moral fabric of Russian society. Yet, beneath these stories lay a man grappling with his own spiritual identity and a desire to serve. There are reports that Rasputin believed himself to be a holy man guided by divine inspiration rather than personal manipulation. He viewed himself as a prophet or a healer chosen by God to serve a special purpose. His restlessness and erratic behavior could be interpreted not simply as manipulation, but as the struggle of a deeply spiritual individual fighting to reconcile his visions and powers with the suspicions and hostility around him. Nevertheless, his political clout was undeniable. Rasputin's proximity to the Tsarina gave him indirect sway over court affairs and influence over the imperial family's perceptions of political issues. Some court insiders claimed he meddled in state matters or advised the Tsarina on political appointments. This intensifying influence, combined with rumors of his involvement in clandestine political maneuvers, made him a dangerous figure in the eyes of the ruling elite. Many saw Rasputin as a destabilizing force, an outsider whose mystical influence threatened the stability of the monarchy, especially during a time of national crisis brewing just beneath the surface. The court's resentment of Rasputin's dominance grew over time, culminating in a faction of aristocrats who believed they needed to act to curb his power before it led to catastrophe. Conspiracies began to form among the noble classes, who viewed Rasputin as a symbol of the corruption and decadence plaguing Russia's declining imperial system. His allegations of black magic and scandalous reputation provided a convenient target for those who wished to see him removed from the royal palace and replaced with more politically reliable advisors. Amid this swirl of suspicion and intrigue, Rasputin's image was further distorted by political enemies eager to brand him as a villain. Propaganda campaigns and sensationalized stories painted him as a sinister figure wielding dark magic, seducing the royal family and corrupting the government. Some legends even suggest he had secret ties with foreign enemies or that he was a puppet for revolutionary agitators seeking to destabilize the Tsardom from within. Such stories fueled a climate of paranoia, developing into a near-mythic status that would only grow more intense in the subsequent decades. Throughout his life, Rasputin remained a deeply enigmatic individual, simultaneously revered and reviled. His true motives are lost amid the myths and embellishments, but many biographers agree he was a complex figure driven by spiritual fervor, personal ambition, and a mixture of genuine healing ability and manipulative tendencies. Some see a tragic figure, a man who believed in his divine calling but was manipulated by others or himself, living a life caught between faith and obsession. In the end, Rasputin's influence over the Romanovs and Russia was as destructive as it was fascinating. Whether he wielded true mystical powers or was simply a master manipulator, his presence exposed the cracks within the Russian monarchy, cracks that would rapidly deepen in the years following his death. As the country spiraled toward revolution, the man behind the myth remained a symbol of the tumult, an outsider whose outsized influence became a catalyst for profound change, for better or worse. On the cold winter night of December 16, 1916, in what was then the Russian Empire's capital, a chilling conspiracy was set in motion, one that would ultimately culminate in the mysterious and brutal death of Grigory Rasputin. To understand the full weight of what transpired, it's essential to delve into the minds of the conspirators, aristocratic men whose lives and reputations were threatened by Rasputin's increasing influence over the imperial family. These were men who saw Rasputin not just as a controversial mystic, but as a dangerous figure whose presence symbolized corruption, divine unpredictable power, and a destabilizing force within the crumbling monarchy. The mastermind behind the plot was Prince Felix Yusupov, a young nobleman and one of the Tsar's relatives. Yusupov, along with Vladimir Prishkovich, a prominent politician and monarchist, and other aristocratic confidants, believed that Rasputin represented a threat to Russia's stability. Rumors swirled that Rasputin wielded an unsettling sway over Tsarina Alexandra, who believed the peasant mystic could heal her son Alexei's hemophilia and protect the Romanov dynasty. As Rasputin's influence grew, so too did the suspicion and resentment among Russia's aristocracy and political elites, many of whom viewed him as a corrupting influence, an outsider who could sway decisions with his mystical airs and immoral reputation. The conspiracy, therefore, aimed to rid the court of Rasputin once and for all. Their plan was meticulously crafted: lure him into a trap, assassinate him discreetly, and restore what they considered moral order to the imperial court. The challenge was formidable, given Rasputin's reputation for resilience and his reputed mystical strength, and the conspirators knew they needed more than just brute force. They needed strategic cunning, and some believed a little dark magic of their own. Yusupov's plan was straightforward yet audacious. On the night in question, he invited Rasputin to his palace under the pretext of a social gathering. Rasputin, ever eager for the attention and somewhat naive about the true intentions of his hosts, accepted the invitation. The evening was set in Yusupov's luxurious mansion, an opulent setting that belied the sinister purpose brewing beneath the surface. The first line of attack was poisoning. The conspirators prepared cyanide, an infamous choice, given its reputation for quick lethality. They dissolved cyanide capsules into food and wine, hoping the poison would be an effortless solution to their problem. Yusupov offered Rasputin a decadent meal laced with the lethal substance, and initially it seemed to be working. Rasputin consumed the food and drank the wine with apparent ease, exhibiting no signs of distress or poisoning. In fact, Yusupov later claimed that Rasputin appeared unfazed, even with the deadly chemicals in his system. However, as the story goes, and as some later accounts suggest, the poison was not effective. Rasputin seemed remarkably resistant or perhaps suspicious, and the conspirators became nervous. Frustrated but unwilling to give up, they decided to escalate their efforts. Yusupov drew a pistol and, with a shaky hand, shot Rasputin in the chest. The initial shot rang out, and Rasputin collapsed. Yet astonishingly, witnesses and subsequent reports claimed that Rasputin did not die immediately. Instead, he staggered or perhaps lunged toward his attacker, fighting back in a way that has fueled myth and legend. This mythos began to take root. Was Rasputin more than just a man? Was he imbued with some dark, otherworldly strength that defied common death? The conspirators, now frantic, moved quickly to cover their tracks. They panicked, perhaps fearing that Rasputin was not dead, or that the killing might not stick. Legend maintains that Yusupov struck Rasputin repeatedly with a club, trying to ensure the final blow, while others claim that additional shots were fired. The violence was brutal and relentless. In the chaos, Rasputin's body was reportedly moved and subjected to further abuse, beatings and multiple gunshots, all aimed at silencing him permanently. After the murder, the conspirators faced their own dread. What had they truly accomplished? A subsequent and troubling detail was how the body was handled in the aftermath. The conspirators claimed to have disposed of Rasputin's body by dumping it into the Neva River, a common fate for victims in Russia's tumultuous history. But some reports and rumors whispered of staged scenes, altered bodies, and conspiracy theories suggesting that perhaps Rasputin's death was not as straightforward as a simple murder. These stories have persisted, fueling the legend of Rasputin as a mystical survivor whose death might have been hastily arranged or even thwarted by supernatural forces. Adding to the intrigue, there were whispers that the Russian conspirators, or even external enemies, might have had a more sinister purpose. Some theorized that Rasputin's death was the culmination of a ritualistic act or a political assassination designed not just to remove a controversial figure, but to send a message to those who believed him to possess dark mystical powers. These dark rumors, coupled with the fact that Rasputin's influence had become intertwined with royal politics and revolutionary unrest, created a perfect storm of suspicion and myth. The night's events had profound implications. Did Rasputin truly die that evening, or did his myth survive through the chaos, conspiracy, and rumors? The truth remains shrouded in darkness, with conflicting reports and the aura of mysticism surrounding his death casting long shadows over history. The night of Rasputin's assassination remains one of the most infamous and debated events in Russian history, shrouded in mystery, conflicting accounts, and macabre details that continue to fuel speculation even a century later. When the conspirators lured Rasputin to Yusupov's palace on December 16, 1916 Julian calendar, they believed they had devised a plan to finally end his influence over the Russian royal family. Little did they know that what would unfold that night would become a legend filled with gruesome twists, supernatural whispers, and unanswered questions. The initial attempt to kill Rasputin involved poisoning him with cyanide-laced wine and sweets. Prince Felix Yusupov, one of the main conspirators, reported that the poison appeared to have no effect. When Rasputin, seemingly unscathed, continued to socialize and even ate more poisoned food, the conspirators grew increasingly desperate. Convinced that their plan had failed, they resorted to shooting him. Multiple shots were fired, one into his head, another into his chest, and a few more as Rasputin allegedly tried to fight back or escape. What makes these claims even more unsettling is the autopsy report that followed. The official autopsy revealed that Rasputin had been shot multiple times, yet some evidence hints at the possibility that he might have survived some of these shots initially. Eyewitness accounts and modern investigators have suggested that Rasputin might have been resilient to gunfire, or that he was fighting fiercely when he was shot. Conspirators reportedly found it difficult to confirm his death at first, and some accounts even claim he exhibited signs of life after the gunshots, an unsettling notion that has led to rampant speculation. Adding to the horror, after shooting him relentlessly, the conspirators reportedly beat and strangled Rasputin to ensure he was dead. Witness testimonies describe how the body was found with multiple gunshot wounds and signs of severe physical assault. The brutality of the killing has led some to believe that the murder was not a simple act of political elimination, but rather a ritualistic or symbolic act meant to sever mystical ties or to serve as a form of dark retribution. The bizarre and gruesome details extend beyond the shooting. According to some accounts, Rasputin's body was discovered in a surprisingly gruesome state. Some reports state that his body was found in a deserted cellar or in the Neva River, the same body dump believed to have been staged or altered. The autopsy findings indicated that Rasputin's body showed signs of torture and violence, with some reports suggesting that he had been beaten so severely that bones were broken. Yet, one of the most disturbing aspects is the recurring rumor that Rasputin might have fought back during his last moments, his resilience contributing to the enduring myth of his supernatural immunity. The report of his body being dumped into the Neva River has its own dark undercurrent. Some conspirators claimed they disposed of his corpse to hide evidence, but the question remains: was Rasputin truly dead by the time his body was submerged? Numerous stories since then have claimed that his body was recovered, showing signs that challenged the official narrative. For example, some witnesses stated that Rasputin's body had inexplicable injuries, such as a single bullet in the forehead and multiple wounds inconsistent with standard homicide. Others suggest that the body was staged or even altered post-mortem to cover up the true nature of his death. Adding to the enigma is the persistent belief among mystics, conspiracy theorists, and sensationalists that Rasputin possessed supernatural resilience. Many believed he had mystical protections, or even that he was cursed, or perhaps blessed, what some interpret as a sign of dark mysticism or supernatural influence. Legends spread that Rasputin's spirit haunted Russia, and that his death was more than just a political assassination. It was a dark ritual or a spiritual battle. Theories have circulated claiming that Rasputin's death was manipulated by powerful figures who saw him as a dangerous threat. Some suggest that the true killers may have had links to secret societies, occult rituals, or even dark forces beyond ordinary understanding. These claims, while unproven and often dismissed as folklore, have fueled the mythic aura around his death. The idea that Rasputin might have been an immortal or an unkillable being persists in popular culture, feeding into films, books, and conspiracy theories that depict him as a figure of dark mysticism who defied death. The controversy surrounding Rasputin's death is compounded further by the fact that no definitive evidence conclusively proves he was fully killed that night, or that he was killed at all. Some skeptics and alternative researchers propose that Rasputin was set up, his body prepared in a way to suggest he was murdered, but in reality he might have survived or escaped. The staged autopsy, discrepancies in corpse reports, and the bizarre resilience displayed in the autopsy findings all contribute to the suspicion that the story of Rasputin's death is more complex than it appears. This ambiguity has led to countless theories, ranging from the straightforward to the bizarre. Some claim that Rasputin was poisoned and shot multiple times, yet he somehow survived these attempts only to be killed in a final, brutal manner. Others argue that he was a supernatural figure protected by mystical forces, and that his death was merely a myth meant to contain or symbolize the end of his influence. The conspiracy theories have grown so elaborate that some believe Rasputin's death was part of a larger occult ritual designed to seal his power forever, or conversely, to harness his supposed supernatural abilities. To this day, the true circumstances of Rasputin's death remain a mystery. Official documents, autopsy reports, and eyewitness accounts conflict, each adding layers to the legend. The macabre details, multiple gunshot wounds, possible strangulation, and post-mortem violence paint a picture of a brutal, almost ritualistic killing. Meanwhile, the persistent rumors that Rasputin fought back, survived, or was even cursed keep the legend alive. These dark, unsettling elements have cemented his story as a symbol of chaos, mysticism, and political intrigue, one that continues to fascinate and terrify those who seek to uncover the truth behind the shadows of history. In the end, what truly happened that night may forever remain buried beneath a veil of darkness and myth. Was Rasputin truly killed in the manner recorded? Or was his death a carefully staged event, part of a larger secret? Did he possess supernatural resilience, or are we simply witnessing the power of legend? In the wake of Rasputin's death, the immediate consequences were profound and far-reaching, not only for the individuals directly involved, but also for the entire course of Russian history. His assassination marked a pivotal turning point that accelerated the unraveling of the imperial system and set the stage for the upheaval that would soon engulf Russia. To fully understand the significance of Rasputin's death, it's essential to examine both the historical aftermath and the enduring legacy that his story left behind. Following his murder on the night of December 16, 1916 Julian calendar, Rasputin's influence over the imperial family, particularly Tsarina Alexandra, began to wane rapidly. The conspirators hoped that by eliminating Rasputin, they could shift political power away from the mystics' supposedly corrupting influence and restore a semblance of stability to the ailing monarchy. Initially, the plan seemed successful. Rasputin's death signaled, at least outwardly, a victory for the aristocrats who sought to purge themselves of his influence. But ironically, the chaos that ensued in the political sphere only intensified. The death of Rasputin contributed heavily to the growing distrust and disillusionment simmering within the Russian court and society. Rumors and conspiracy theories about his influence had long fueled the belief that Rasputin was a destabilizing force, an evil magician, a corrupt manipulator, or even a puppet master behind the throne. Once he was gone, many believed that the royal family's reliance on mysticism and their detachment from the realities faced by everyday Russians had only deepened. This perception helped ignite revolutionary sentiments, feeding the narrative of a corrupt, disconnected regime that needed to be overthrown. In the months following his death, Russia plunged further into turmoil. The already strained monarchy was unable to prevent the spiraling unrest that gripped the country, leading to a series of strikes, protests, and widespread dissatisfaction. The Bolsheviks and other revolutionary factions capitalized on this chaos, promising change and a departure from the old regime's corruption and mysticism. The fall of Tsar Nicholas II in 1917, culminating in his abdication, was the tragic climax of a nation's descent into revolution, a revolution that many historians now view as accelerated by the destabilizing influence of Rasputin's myth and the public's perception of the monarchy's decadence. The Romanov family's tragic fate did not end with the abdication. The execution of Nicholas II and his family in 1918, during the Russian Civil War, marked the brutal end of the Romanov dynasty and was a stark symbol of the revolutionary upheaval. Some historians speculate that the death of Rasputin, widely seen as a symbol of corruption and mysticism, removed a perceived protector of the corrupt monarchy, inadvertently removing a barrier to revolutionary fervor. The belief in Rasputin's power, whether rooted in myth or reality, became intertwined with the narrative that the old regime's downfall was inevitable, a tragic consequence of the dark forces it had nurtured. Beyond immediate political consequences, Rasputin's death became a symbol woven into the fabric of Russian and world history, an enduring legend that would fascinate generations to come. His figure transformed into a dark icon of mysticism, corruption, and conspiracy. Tales of black magic, debauchery, and political manipulation continued to circulate long after his death, fueling popular culture's obsession with dark, esoteric stories. His life and murder were depicted in countless books, films, and conspiracy theories, cementing his place as a symbol of the mysterious forces lurking behind political power. The myth of Rasputin also became a lens through which to examine broader questions about the nature of power, influence, and morality. Was Rasputin purely a manipulative charlatan, or was he a victim of circumstance, a mystical figure whose resilience baffled even his assassins? Some speculate that stories of his supernatural resilience, or even supposed survival after multiple gunshots, only contributed to the aura of mysticism surrounding him. Reports and autopsy findings about his body after death remain shrouded in mystery, some claiming he was shot repeatedly and still fought back, while others suggest his body was staged or tampered with to cover up truths that are forever lost to history. Theories about Rasputin's death have persisted, ranging from plausible to fantastical. Some believe he was killed in a ritualistic manner, perhaps involving dark magic or black arts, adding a sinister layer to his myth. Others insist that he was simply a manipulative charlatan who had outstayed his welcome and was eliminated to protect political interests. Still, questions continue to swirl. Was Rasputin truly killed that night, or did he somehow survive, either physically or symbolically, his demise? Certain conspiracy theories allege that he was part of an occult conspiracy, or that his death was a staged event meant to conceal deeper political secrets. Many writers and historians point out that the true power of Rasputin's story lies in its ambiguity. The mystery surrounding his death allows his legend to live on, fueling curiosity and fascination centuries later. His death became a subject of dark folklore, suggesting that he was a supernatural being or a cursed figure whose spirit haunted Russia long after his physical demise. Such stories have contributed significantly to his lasting legacy, transforming him into an almost mythic figure, more shadow than flesh and blood. The legend of Rasputin extended beyond Russia's borders. In the West, he became a symbol of the corrupting influence of mysticism and secret societies. His figure was exploited in various conspiracy theories suggesting shadowy plots involving the monarchy, secret cabals, or even foreign spies. Even today, his story is invoked in popular culture, movies, music, literature, often emphasizing themes of darkness, mysticism, and political intrigue. His death also led to an intense debate among historians and scholars about historical truths versus myth. Was Rasputin truly a villainous influence, or was he a scapegoat for the broader failures of an archaic and crumbling empire? The evidence is often conflicting, leaving room for interpretation. The fact that many aspects of his death remain unresolved fuels this ongoing debate. The autopsy reports, witness accounts, and historical records all contain discrepancies, some reveling in the sensational, others attempting to uncover a more rational explanation. In some, the aftermath and legacy of Rasputin's death are complex and layered. His killing accelerated the fall of the Romanovs and the decline of Imperial Russia, but it also transformed him into a legendary figure, shrouded in darkness and intrigue. His story continues to symbolize the dangerous allure of mysticism intertwined with political power, a cautionary tale about how myths, rumors, and secrets shape history long after the facts fade away. The question remains, was Rasputin truly a victim of sinister forces, or is his story a reflection of humanity's enduring fascination with dark, mysterious figures that threaten to undermine the world's perceived order? Whatever the answer, his shadow still looms large over the corridors of history, haunting the collective memory of a nation and the world alike.